I'm not shitting on Waters as a player. I think he does a lot of things well, but when I heard that, I was like, he didn't play that.
Welcome to 1001 Album Complaints, the show where lifelong friends, musicians, and guys who show their love through gentle but pointed mockery tell the backstory on the most influential albums of all time, as chronicled in Robert Dimery's book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. If you don't know today's album super well, or not at all, no worries, we will guide you through it. We're going to play song clips while we dive into the backstory of this artist and this album. And along the way, we're going to be breaking these songs down musically and culturally to offer you both our praise and our nitpicky complaints as musicians. And at the end of all that, we're going to vote on whether this album is really a must listen before you die. Now, if you are a regular listener, thank you and welcome back. And in fact, welcome to our 250th show.
Woohoo!
Man,
never thought we'd get this far.
That was wild.
That's by the numbers I never thought we'd get to.
Thank all of you for being here. You keep us juiced up to keep doing this. Your emails, your various complaints in the comment threads telling us what terrible taste we have. It gives us the spite fuel that we need to continue this endeavor.
I feel like we are far enough into this now that I'm scared to stop, but I'm also scared at how much lies ahead.
You have 15 more years in you, Alan?
Oh, definitely not.
Living or doing this podcast?
Alan's son will be inheriting his spot.
I'm taking my injection of painkillers right now so I can perform.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're new to the show, let me give you the standard disclaimer. We are musicians. We understand how difficult it is to make truly great art, and we come from a place of love and respect for the craft. However, we also enjoy nitpicking and complaining, as the title of our show suggests. So, we are not super fans, but honestly, even if we were, we'd still enjoy laughing about the way our favorite music got made. So the bottom line is we're not going to be treating this artist or this album with any particular reverence. Instead, we're going to be talking some loving smack, the way all musicians do in the van ride to the next gig when the radio plays literally any song. And actually, full disclosure, I'm reasonably close to a super fan in this case, but don't worry, there's still plenty of nits to pick.
Well, and the radio will play plenty of songs from this record. Certainly.
Yeah, right.
So here we are at our celebration, our 250th, and to commemorate this milestone, we've gone out of our way to select what is possibly the complainiest album to ever complain. My name is Rob. I'm a guitar player with decades of experience playing, writing, and recording music, and I'm here tonight to walk you through the story of an album that Robert Christgau, our spiritual, curmudgeonly godfather, writing for the Village Voice, called A Dumb Tribulations of a Rock Star Epic. B-.
Wow.
I never know what his grades are going to be. He's like, this is an absolute worthless piece of shit. A+. Yes.
He also, I looked back, he also had given Darkside a B. He didn't like Darkside either, so.
Oh, come on.
He's a true complainer. Talks shit and then says, all right, I'll give it a yes at the end.
But speaking of the critics, the New York Times called this album self-indulgent.
No.
And Melody Maker said, I'm not sure whether it's brilliant or terrible, but I find it utterly compelling. Well, tonight I'm here to assure you, audience, that Pink Floyd's The Wall is all of those things, every single one of those adjectives, and we're going to expound upon that and poke some fun and tell a well-researched backstory of this rock opera of a double album. But first, let's get ourselves situated with a clip from the biggest hit and by far the most well-known track from The Wall. It is called Another Brick in the Way. We're going to introduce our panel of complainers for our celebration episode tonight by way of an extra mean, extra snarky tweet length review. And I am going to send things first to Alan.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of 1001 Album Complaints. As you know, we do a lot of bonus content on this show, and one of our favorite shows is our Vanity Project series, where we make fun of various celebrity music ventures. And in this episode, we're focusing on a wealthy, famous, and highly successful entertainer who hires a team of A-list musicians to spend 80 minutes telling the world how sad and depressed he is. But where David Hasselhoff, Joe Pesci, and the Macho Man Randy Savage have failed, Roger Waters mostly succeeds in both feeding his ego and making an incredible album.
Oh, there we go.
Well done. Wow.
Let's kick it next to Tom.
All right. I got two here, guys, so I'll just read them back. We'll see which one lands best.
Bring them.
A sentient Easter Island head desperately wants you to know that the reason he is an asshole is all his mother's fault. No, wait, it's his dead father's fault, or his teacher's fault, or the women who want to have sex with him's fault. And he conveys this message to you in the most asshole way possible by making you listen to the same song over and over and over again. 9 out of 10 stars.
Chris Gow would be proud.
Yeah. And I channeled Adam for this one. We'll see if this is going to land here. On the wall, Roger Waters shows you his dark side, creating a rock opera about the more animal side of stardom. And while the meaning may seem obscured by clouds, they don't meddle with the formula too much, so the final cut still leaves you wanting more.
I think you're keeping both those tweets. I think that's what's happening here.
Let's kick it next to Adam.
Hey, everybody, this is Adam. I also had a reference to Robert Christgau, who, as we know, his reviews are so highfalutin and grammatically complex and classy that sometimes I walk away not knowing if he's complimenting or insulting an album. So this week, I really took my time to compose something I hope would make him proud. Stink Floyd's The Wall is a tour de farce, a coup d'etat against traditional rock and roll tropes. While it's considered number 2 in popularity in terms of their discography, I think it's the pinnacle of their creative outpoop. Yes, this album is a masterpiece of shit.
Wow. That is really great, Adam. Great to have you back on the show. Feels like it's been a minute since I got a taste of that. And this is Rob here, and my tweet is, so ya thought ya might like to blame everyone but yourself for your miserable existence as a world famous rock star. Boo-hoo, Karen.
Don't forget the worms. They're responsible too.
Oh, man.
Look, and for this very special occasion, we also sent it out to you, the listeners, on our free Patreon feed to write your own mean tweets. We have a few of the best ones here tonight that I'm going to have the boys in the studio read. We're going to go around the room again, but we're going to be reading listener tweets. So first, I'm going to send it back to Alan.
All right. Well, we got a good one to start off here. Listener Demir, who always comes in hot on Patreon, he says, excited to cover Pink Floyd's greatest album. Oh, we're not doing Wish You Were Here? All right. Excited to cover Pink Floyd's second greatest album. Oh, wait, we already did Dark Side of the Moon. Okay. Excited to cover Pink Floyd's third greatest album. We're not doing Animals either? God fucking damn it.
Good
Beautiful.
one. Shots fired. We're going to send it next to Adam.
All right, so Nick from Manchester writes in, The Wall is 2 LPs of immaculate musicianship spent proving that if you're rich, traumatized, and talented enough, your emotional baggage can be classified as high art.
Indeed. Seems like a lot of us have struck on a similar theme. Definitely appreciate that. I am going to read the next one. This is from listener Brian, who is, dare I say, a world-class tweeter. He wrote, 1979 saw the release of a groundbreaking double album that still holds up today. However, the crew wanted to listen to Pink Floyd instead, so we'll have to get to London Calling some other time.
Good one.
Nice.
And we're going to round this out with Tom. He has one more for us.
Thank you. Friend of the show, and I would say maybe one of our favorite of the complaining public, Sula, writes, drug-induced shite, boring, quote, music by twat-faced, dull, English, middle-class white men. A brick in the face for all of them. This album is worse than anything by Joy Division.
Wow.
Whoa. So I knew you were my spirit animal. There we go.
Some real vitriol there.
Oh, I love it.
I got to log off. That's
Is that another poop joke, Adam?
That was a little harsh in my opinion, but we'll see. Maybe she was just going extra hard in the paint.
I'm convinced Sula might actually just be Tom burner account.
Okay, let's talk about general impressions of The Wall. What was your experience coming into this week, and how was your week, guys?
You actually nailed one of my general impressions in your introduction, Rob. Obviously, we'll get into it over the next several hours, but I think it's one of the rare cases where I sort of agree with the full spectrum of sentiments about this record. I don't think it's their best record. It's absolutely overindulgent, self-absorbed, pompous, all that shit. It has issues, but it's also a damn fine record. And it was interesting to go back through it now at this stage of my life, having heard it a ton in high school and then also heard every permutation of songs on classic rock radio, and to kind of come back to it from this perspective, I have to say I came away feeling a lot more respect for it, but also even more complainy about it than I was before.
Yeah, I agree. Is it melodramatic? Yes. But it's also pristinely conceived, written, and recorded.
Yeah.
And it's a complete story arc in a way that so few of these types of things are. It's got symbolism. It's heavy-handed symbolism. Don't get me wrong. But okay, it's impressive, I think, by any measure.
Yes, I love this album. I've always loved this album. I think that it got to me at a particularly angsty time of my life. And so it really spoke to me as a teenager. And this is one of the jewels of my vinyl collection. I got a copy of the original pressing of The Wall.
Damn.
That doesn't say The Wall anywhere on it. And so it had like an insert in it that says Pink Floyd's The Wall that I have.
Oh, shit.
I got it for like $2 at an estate sale. It's awesome. And I listened to it on vinyl this week, and it sounds fucking immaculate. And the thing that really jumped out to me this week, and it's something that I've always thought about Pink Floyd, maybe subconsciously, but never was able to like really express it, is that they are such a slow band. They are just like slow and patient, and they're never doing anything that's like super flashy, but everything just seems really well thought out and perfectly placed.
Right.
And yes, some of this is whiny, absolutely. But I really came to respect the musicianship a lot more, picking up a lot more on those repeating motifs and how they
Totally
correspond to like certain childhood trauma is in this song at the beginning, and it comes back at the end with that motif.
It might be the most concept-y album ever to concept in that sense.
Yes.
right.
But it does it successfully. And I hear what you're saying. Again, we'll talk about all the issues with it, but most of these types of concepts, in my mind, they don't really land the plane. And they get around to it. They maybe make you feel a certain kind of way. But this one felt like a fully contained narrative. And it also, there's something, I was struck by the feelings that it evoked for me, even now, listening to it, being fairly familiar with it, especially being a dad and hearing this story and the way they tee up, the way they drop the music in. There was, moments where it's very haunting and moments where it's very beautiful, and then it switches it up instantly within the same song. And it just, I think one of the things that I kind of felt was most of the albums that we do for this show, I have to like intentionally take myself out of whatever I'm doing so I can just focus on that and just truly listen. This like forced me to do that. Like this took me by force out of whatever I was doing in a way that I was very struck by, and didn't have that same experience in high school, which was mostly like drug-fueled listening experiences.
This can't be background music. It demands your attention. And I'm going to bring some interesting perspective here because, big shocker, I've never listened to this album. I've heard
I actually am shocked by that, I gotta be honest.
I can hear people angrily typing into Patreon right now. Yeah, I've obviously heard all the singles, but I've never listened to this all the way through in one sitting or even two sittings. I've never seen the movie, so truly I'm coming in as somebody who would have experienced this album when it was released, because I don't think the movie was made for a couple years, 3 or 4 years.
Couple more years.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what struck me was that even maybe 2 times through, I was not necessarily able to tie all the pieces together of the story. It wasn't until I went and searched and saw like, oh, that's what he's talking about. Oh, that's what she said here. And then I was able to start tying some things around and build out that story. But if you had just given this to me, I wouldn't have been able to tell you a cohesive story upon listening to it 2 times. Definitely needed lyrics, definitely needed an explainer. Again, I assume the movie would have done that.
It does it partially, but that was also my experience in high school, and I bet the other guys too, where you had to listen to it a bunch of times
To pick up on it.
to get the story arc. But once you do, you kind of can't unhook from that story. And yeah, the movie did help with it, clarify a few things. I meant it as a compliment that it's the most concept-y album because everything supports the story arc, and the story itself is very well structured. And like Tom was saying earlier, the singing, the production choices, and the instrumentation all support the story in a pretty musical, deep way.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's great. You know, of course, though, maybe we haven't said this yet, it's weird. He went full musical, right? This is what musicals are like. They're trying to tell a story through song, and if you just listen to a musical without seeing the stage play, you'll have a similar experience where you have to get it into your head and listen a few times and pay close attention to get the nature of the story, but it is there, right?
Totally.
You know what I think is the biggest achievement on this album is that, yes, there is a story. There are a lot of songs that don't survive outside of this cohesive story. But there are also several just absolute fucking banger songs that fit right in with the story.
Yeah, standalones.
Well, this is the other funny thing, and we're going to hear about it a little bit in the backstory, is that think about how big a change this is for Pink Floyd. They had effectively given up on releasing singles in like 1968. And part of that is freed them up to write these longer songs. And I should say, some songs, like, for instance, Money from Dark Side of the Moon, that just became a single because DJs were playing it on the radio. They did not release it as a single. So then, weirdly, even though this is the longest of their records, they came out with the most hit singles and their biggest hit single and their only #1 hit single ever on this one. And
really?
Which is Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. So the songs are actually shorter and more single-friendly. And the other thing, you alluded to it, but I wanted to point out right away that musically is, I think, a step forward for them that's really cool, and a cool part of the experience of listening to this all the way through. Part of what demands your attention is they do a lot more fast cuts or drops into parts or songs than they do on previous records. Even though the previous records, a lot of times the songs blend into and go evenly into the next song, and we've talked about that on the Dark Side episode, and we love that about Pink Floyd. But there are a lot fewer, at least in my recollection, sharp cuts in vibe and production that snap you awake like there are on this record.
Yeah, and the use of like televisions playing in the background or like traffic sounds as a way to get you from one song to another, it really does put you in the mind of a guy sitting by himself in a hotel room, fucking feeling lonely and whacked out of his mind and feeling trapped. You know, like I've felt that way if I have to go on like a business trip or something like that, and I'm just in my hotel room, like, what the fuck am I even doing with myself? Well, I don't know anybody here. I can't talk to anybody. I'm just going to sit here and have 4 more beers, I guess, you know?
And then you start throwing TVs out the window.
Yeah, and then I start beating up prostitutes, basically. Yeah.
Oh, that checks out, too.
The other thing that we have not touched on, and I think we should just talk about it up front rather than save it for later in the conversation, and this is something that I did not notice this until the streaming era, which is that this is a circle. The last song cuts, and right where it cuts, if you just have it playing on repeat, it goes right into the first song, which actually makes the whole storyline way more fucking depressing.
I totally agree.
Because it's like you have problems, you fight through it, you come to the end, you're like, yes, and then right back
in. Yo, I didn't put that together.
I never noticed that aspect of it either until listening to it a bunch of times, because it's very subtle. It's really the half second at the beginning that it clips back in. But as soon as that clicked for me, I legit had an emotional feeling of, oh fuck, this is dark. Like this, he's not free. Like this is tough.
Yeah, the line is
this where we came in? And it's like, is this where we, and then cuts and says came in, like right at the beginning of the first song. Yeah,
I did notice that long ago, and I think that is a really cool element of things.
But and also really fucking dark. Like, yeah.
Also dark. Well, these guys are in a dark place. And I think that's a good segue to start talking about the backstory, because we have a hell of a lot of it to get into. We can continue offering our thoughts and feelings as we go. But let's get into the backstory of Pink Floyd's The Wall. But first, we're going to take a quick break. And we are back. So before we get into the story here, I've got to give it up for my main and first bibliographical source. It's a YouTube channel called Vinyl Rewind. Great content, well researched. They made a great piece on the making of this album that formed the scaffolding for our story here tonight and into next week's episode. So check them out, subscribe to their channel. After that terrific overview, I watched a ton of other stuff. I read interviews from all the principals, the producers, the engineers, etc. I looked at tour videos, everything I could, but that formed a really great scaffolding, and I thought it was a great channel, very well done piece. Vinyl Rewind.
Nice.
So, you may recall that we last covered Pink Floyd on our 50th episode, oh so long ago. Now, in that episode, we managed to stick, for the most part, just to the album story itself, because there was so much there, and this revisit is going to be the same. Pink Floyd's full origin story will have to wait for another time, but just in case you're completely new to Pink Floyd, here is a very short history. They're a band that starts in London. They're an early psych rock band. This is in 1965, or I believe at the time they called themselves progressive rock, which just meant a lot of sonic experimentation, weird noises. The lead singer and main songwriter was a guy called Syd Barrett, and they made a fairly successful debut album, only to see Syd Barrett deteriorate mentally, leave the group before their second album was fully completed, which means other members step up to write and sing, and importantly, they recruit guitarist and friend David Gilmour to fill out the space left by Syd Barrett, thus forming the classic lineup of Pink Floyd that would go on to even more fame with albums like Dark Side of the Moon. That classic lineup, also in place here on the wall, is David Gilmour on guitar and lead vocals at times, Roger Waters on bass and lead vocals at times, Rick Wright on keyboards some of the time, and Nick Mason on drums. Now, they do switch up. We'll talk about where they deviate from those, but that's the general band configuration, and those are the people we're going to be talking about. So from there, the band rises to fame over the next couple albums, leading to smash hit Dark Side of the Moon, again covered by us on episode 50, which becomes and stays one of the highest selling albums of all time, like top 3 ever, up there next to Thriller.
Damn.
But where we pick up our story, in 1977, Pink Floyd is a hugely successful rock band, perhaps the biggest band in the world. And you'd think that that would be enough to solve their various personal complaints, but no. Instead, we find them in the middle of their In the Flesh stadium tour. Now, this could be a confusing detail, so bear with me, because this album's first track is also called In the Flesh. But in fact, the tour was in support of their previous album, which is called Animals. And The Floyd, as they're known, has a huge stage show. There's flying pigs, there's crazy lights, there's an insane wall of sound, there's all kinds of sound effects they have in tow. And that, plus their immense popularity, of course, in the wake of their landmark album Dark Side of the Moon, sees them playing these huge venues. In part because of the sheer electrical power setup they need to make the show work. And I got the sense for a couple years now that the band just had been missing smaller, more intimate type theater shows. But, you know, that's a little bit in conflict with them as we know them. They love a spectacle as well. And so those two things are kind of diametrically opposed at the time. And you know, I should say right off the bat, keep in mind that powering, like the tech powering these big stadium shows back then was so far behind the kinds of things we see now. But I do think it could definitely be argued that Pink Floyd was the largest scale rock show on the planet at that point, and that they set a standard that's still echoing today. Like, they're the reason for the big production style of show that we see today.
Right. You wouldn't have Muse without Pink Floyd, obviously. Not just from a musical standpoint, but from a stage show.
Or even the Eras tour.
Yeah, or U2.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just think spectacle is really important in the modern...
Wait, we wouldn't have U2 without Pink Floyd?
Wouldn't have the Zoo TV tour, at least. You know?
If I only had a time machine.
Kill baby Hitler.
No, but Rob, I want to get back to something that you said about them missing the smaller, more intimate shows, because I don't think that it was a thing that people were doing at the time, but I love the fact that a lot of modern artists are like, I'm just going to play a smaller show. Fuck it. I know that I could play the local stadium or arena that seats 25,000 people, but I'm going to play the 10,000 person, or I'm going to play the 4,000 person room. That was on the table. They could have done that if they're really like.
Well, I think shows were in a weird place then, because 77-ish punk was starting to come up, and that seems like where a lot of the rock energy probably was in those smaller punk shows, or disco on the other side of the coin was where people were seeing music. So I bet there probably wasn't even a ton of bands that were doing this kind of arena thing, frankly, at that time. Maybe like the Eagles.
Yeah.
There were not.
There also was I watched something very recently from that YouTube channel, More Perfect Union, talking about ticket prices, concert ticket prices. And they basically said that concert ticket prices adjusted for inflation from like the mid 60s to the early 80s. The average ticket was like $29 adjusted for inflation.
Jeez.
Damn.
There was no outlet for you to be like, I'm going to play a smaller show and the tickets are $4,000. You know, like that just didn't exist.
Right.
So a couple comments, because I do know, what's coming. One, they're about to do exactly that. This is part of the design of their next show. They both want to kick up the theatricality and downsize the place they're playing. And spoiler alert, that doesn't work financially, but okay. And second, I already said it. It's a little bit of a paradox, because I think on the one hand, I'll talk more about why they dislike these big shows, and there's some limiting factors of the times, but they also loved spectacle. They were a band that loved complex light shows, on stage props, big sound systems. That was of interest to them, and that's just always been a part of their story.
I remember Phil's dad talking about seeing them in Philadelphia. It might have been at like the big outdoor stadium at the time in Philadelphia. He saw them in the late 70s. And he said that they were like whipping bird sounds around speakers on like the rim of the arena. So that it was just like weird cacophonous sound spinning around, like insanity.
Wait, Phil's dad got to experience hard panning in real life?
It's genetic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, so back to how the band's feeling and why. They're getting disillusioned with these crowds for a few important reasons. One is the sheer size of the crowd at these shows meant a real lack of connection with the fans. They definitely missed that. That's kind of the obvious one. Like you said, the world was moving on. The rock energy was in small clubs, right? But I think more importantly, it might have been about the scene, in quotes, that was starting to crop up on these tours. Now, they're hugely mainstream popular. So all kinds of casual fans are showing up at these things. And guess what they want to do? It's not quietly enjoy the music. It's get hammered and be rowdy, right?
Scream Freebird.
Now, here's a little more, right? At this time, this is one of the interesting pieces I read about that you wouldn't necessarily expect. These stadiums were not at all efficient in getting people in the door, right? That has changed a lot. Just that simple fact. So the band couldn't start until all the fans were there. So the result is the doors would open earlier and earlier, and people are getting in there, standing around, getting plastered, waiting for the band to come on.
Yeah.
Second, combine this with the unshakable idea that this band and its music just pair really well with intoxication. When Pink Floyd hits the stage, people are belligerent. They're loaded to the gills. Some have just passed out. And I have one more piece, which is security is basically non-existent at this point. Folks are bringing in fireworks and lighting shit off. All kinds of dumb stuff, right?
They have one guy with a flashlight at the front of the stage,
I'll be honest, that sounds kind of fucking awesome.
Yeah. It's a rowdy show. So all this made the band feel even more isolated and distanced from the audience. And I'm speculating a little here because I didn't do any research on super early experimental Pink Floyd, but it occurs to me that whether you're talking about early Pink Floyd or early Grateful Dead or Can, who we covered recently on the show, the late 60s avant-garde movement was in part about a purposeful dissolution of the barrier between performer and audience member. So losing this, again, even though I said I know they like spectacle, they like lights, they like big sounds, all this kind of stuff, hard panning, quadraphonic sound, but they're losing part of what they even originally liked as a band. So one night, Roger Waters is like, I hate everyone and I'm an asshole, but how can I profit from that?
Only one night?
No, I mean to say that the road and these conditions are taking their toll. Pink Floyd is acutely aware that they are losing this communal experience. They hate these big shows. It dilutes the message. It makes it seem like the whole thing is about money. In short, they have become the thing that they themselves were making fun of in songs like Money, Have a Cigar, and Pigs.
Damn.
So
That's heavy.
Let's hone in now on a certain night on the tour, July 6th, 1977, the final show of the In the Flesh Animals Pink Floyd tour. It's in Montreal. There's 80,000 people in the crowd.
Whew, that's a big show.
It's a big show.
Damn. That's like a college football game.
Right, I know. And they had been playing, I looked at the tour schedule, by the way. They did play the Spectrum in Philadelphia earlier, which was a smaller show, but still pretty big.
I'm sure there were no drunks at that show.
I think Phil's dad was one of the drunks at that show.
And I think they had just done like a 4 or 5 night sold out run at Madison Square Garden right before this.
Oh, man.
So it's been building for a while. Roger yelling at crowds for being disruptive or unruly or just checked out from the music. This is one of those nights people had snuck fireworks in. They're lighting them off. He's extra pissed. The whole band's very annoyed by this. It's not a good experience for anybody, really. But it's when Roger's playing a fully acoustic song called Pigs on the Wing from the Animals album
Love that song.
that he sees a rowdy fan clambering up beyond the barrier, just trying to lay hands on him for a second, clearly drunk, and it triggers him. And what does he do? He spits directly in this guy's face.
You know, Rob, you recall when we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when we were young?
Yes.
And they had just put up the Pink Floyd's The Wall exhibit. It was shortly after it opened. Like, it was very early on in the time of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And that exact story was like written on the wall. Yeah, he's like, I spit in his face.
Did they have the spit in like a petri dish on display?
To be honest, Tom, well, one, that was my first trip away from home ever. I was 17, maybe you were 16.
Yeah.
And 2, that imprinted on my mind for sure. I remember, I even went back and looked for whatever quote was there, and I couldn't find the exact quote, but it was about that. I think it was supposed to be Roger Waters talking about that moment of disgust where he's both disgusted with the audience and then immediately disgusted with himself. And he just kind of, the whole facade falls down and he realizes what bad shape he and the band are in.
So he didn't do a honky tonk man and break the guitar over the guy and like the WWF music starts.
I think what it was they were so intimidated by punk music. They're like, we got to get more punk, baby. We got to spit on people.
Start spitting.
Imagine being the guy who got spat on and launched this whole thing, because he must be out there.
All right.
Yes, he must be out there. And I looked. He has never surfaced. He's never filed a lawsuit. He's never taken credit. This is effectively the inspiration for this entire album, is that moment. And he's never claimed it. I guess he was really fucked up.
Do you think Roger Waters like made it up?
Right.
No, the band, because the band talks about it too. They were aware of it. They were freaked out by it. And I even read that Gilmour that night, he sat out the last encore. He like went to the back of the house by the soundboard. He was like over it. And the guitar tech who was traveling with them played the solo instead on whatever song it was.
Oh, whoa.
Oh, shit.
That's wild.
So they're all feeling this disillusionment. It's not just Roger Waters. And yeah, Gilmour says he was feeling in that moment like, oh, the band's A, achieved everything I've ever dreamed of, but B, has completely lost their way. The crowd couldn't care less what we played.
Yeah. And then they got on their private jet and flew home and were like, this sucks. I hate this.
They're 4 separate private jets. So then the band goes and takes a break after a long tour and an album cycle. And during that break, Roger thinks deeply about this incident, about his own disenfranchisement, his isolation, and the initial thought that he has is, wouldn't it be great to have a rock show where the band has a wall between them and the audience the entire time?
So we want the money, but we don't want to actually have the fans there. How do we accomplish that?
Wait, you're being serious? This is the thought?
Well, I heard a few different things about this original concept, but basically, this is the concept that blossoms into the wall. His idea is that the wall in that stage show is emphasizing how disconnected and isolating it is to be a rock star. But we'll get a little deeper into it and some of the different things he said over the years. But let's dive into his psychology a little more. Now, in case it's not obvious, Roger Waters is not a sympathetic character. In fact, I'd say he's an asshole of the highest proportions and a bully most of the time. So I'm not going to defend his prickly pear persona, but I can say he is smart. And he is definitely a guy who thinks his ideas through clearly. He's, in my mind, he's the epitome of the "you're not wrong, you're just an asshole" Walter.
Yeah.
So I found an interview around this break time where Roger was asked about the role of the audience at a rock show, and he angrily snaps at the interviewer that their role should be passive. Like, it becomes clear that he's expecting the crowd to be at the same kind of rapt attention, listening to the music as the musicians who are focused on creating it,
Like it's the symphony or something.
which is insane.
No dancing, no clapping.
I mean, artistically, it's not that crazy, but it's completely unrealistic, of course. He went on to say in that same interview, I hate audience participation. It makes my flesh creep.
Jesus Christ.
They should have turned them into a jazz band. Then everyone would just sat there.
Yeah. Or just play prog rock in front of
reaction.
nobody.
Now, again, this is an interview in the moment, in that break when they're at their most vulnerable and they're hating their rock star lifestyle the most. So in that intervening year, the band's on a break. Gilmour goes off. David Gilmour, the guitar player, goes off and records a solo album. Absolutely no one cares. The shows he plays are not well attended. Rick Wright, the keyboard player, also records a solo album. Even fewer people care.
Aww.
And what does Roger do during this time? He writes and records 2 full albums worth of demos to bring to the next band meetup like a full year later. One is tentatively titled Bricks in the Wall, and the other is called The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking.
What?
Which one did he end up using, Rob?
Actually, both, Tom. And he's basically telling them, look, one of these is the next Pink Floyd record, and one is going to be my solo debut. And it kind of sounds like the band didn't like either idea all that much, especially since what would become The Wall was at that point conceived to be a live show where every fan got an obstructed view because that was the whole point. and by the way, in those early instances, he didn't have any conclusion. There was no The Wall coming down. That was added later. Now, Gilmour supposedly initially thought The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking was a better musical idea. It was about a midlife crisis where a guy takes a road trip around California. He cheats on his wife with a hitchhiker. Then he attempts to reconcile and eventually learns something. But Rick and Nick, the 2 other guys in the band,
There's some shit like that.
are like, no fucking way. We're doing The Wall.
Yeah, don't bring up infidelity, man. My wife doesn't know. Like, fucking chill, man.
We can't write an entire album about this.
And just so we're clear, check out Roger Waters' first proper solo album, which is titled The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. It sounds like this, but not as good.
Yeah.
But it did sell 500,000 copies and go gold in the United States.
It has a naked woman hitchhiking on the cover.
It does.
Naked and I believe in high heels, which is like all hitchhikers are just wearing high heels and naked.
Well, in California they are. Right. Yeah.
And you know what also taints it is that lead guitar on that solo record is played by none other than Eric Clapton.
I knew it. I didn't know it, but I knew it.
Bands listen to these demos. It came as a bit of relief for them because the demos were really fleshed out. The concepts were already very clear, and normally they would spend a lot of time trying to get together, figure those things out. Like I said, David and Rick had just been humbled somewhat by their own solo projects, but on the other side of things, this meant that there was a lot less room to collaborate with Roger Waters from here. And Roger is not one to mince words. He makes it very clear that this is his project, that he's 100% in charge, and I guess you guys can play on it too.
Did they have any of these songs already worked out? You know how every new album has something that you're bringing from somewhere else. This is all clean slate.
Nope, it was all clean slate. Almost 100% coming from Roger with one big exception, which I will get to. So Roger moving to take over the band is not exactly a complete surprise. All along, he's been a taskmaster, and over time, they've continued to collaborate. He's been writing more and more of the material on his own. Now, if you look back at the liner notes of the Pink Floyd records dating back to Metal, or maybe even before that, Roger has consistently been credited with all the lyrics, okay? And if you check the liner notes for those records, also, you'll see writing credits, sometimes shared, between Rick Wright, the keyboard player, and David Gilmour, too, some collab pieces. But each record, it's getting more and more Rogers, taking more and more over the writing duties of the band. So, additionally, Roger is in a very spicy mood. He goes out of his way to tell David Gilmour that while he specifically was allowed to co-produce this album with him, the 2 other guys were not invited.
Damn.
I heard different things about this because previous to this, all Pink Floyd records were produced by Pink Floyd. Full stop, right? So this is the first departure from that. And I heard Gilmour say that this was part of a scheme to be able to hire an outside producer whose name is Bob Ezrin because they all saw that it was quite a lot of work ahead. And in the past, Rick, the keyboard player, and Nick Mason, the drummer, didn't do that much despite the production credit. They were always just simply calling it Pink Floyd, but they weren't necessarily contributing the same amount. And, the band maybe is understandably over that. So it's possible they saved some money and used it to hire an outside producer. it's also plausible, piecing these stories together. There's a lot of animosity existing in this band over the decades after this record. Gilmour might just be trying to be a peacemaker. He's kind of the peacemaker in this scenario, even though he has choice words for Roger Waters over the years. Roger Waters is unaware of the concept of peace and is constantly just throwing firecrackers into the middle of the room.
I think they still probably have not reconciled, or at least I remember seeing an interview not too long ago where somebody was asking Gilmour about some of the live shows they did after The Wall. And I don't even remember what the question was, but he says something to the effect of, "Oh, do you mean Roger's show?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't even pretending that like he was a equal stakeholder in the band.
Right.
It vacillates a little bit. I think there's been a little tiny bit of ice melting of late where I've heard Roger Waters speak more complimentarily about David Gilmour's playing, for instance. And they have appeared on stage, I think, only 2 times since then. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Rick Wright, the keyboard player, is like, wait a minute, no, fuck that. We can't lose this major element of Pink Floyd, which is the collaboration. And so they argue about it. Roger Waters initially agrees to let him produce on a trial basis.
Wow.
But you get the sense that he doesn't really respect the contributions of Rick Wright and that their relationship was maybe never great throughout the entire history of the band, and it's been getting worse. Nick Mason, unsurprisingly because he's a drummer and by law must be affable and above band infighting at all times, does not comment.
Above and beyond the I have something artistic that I want to share, in a scenario where you don't write any of the songs and you're not a producer, you're not getting fucking paid. There's a lot of money at stake for that producer credit. Mm-hmm. And so I could see them being very upset about that. It's like, you're literally taking millions of dollars away from me by not letting me be a producer. And I can see also Waters being like, you're literally taking millions of dollars for doing fuck all and saying you're a producer.
Yeah. I think both things are a little bit true. From everything I read, we'll get into a few more of the details, but it does sound like the band was annoyed with Rick Wright and Nick Mason not really contributing much, especially Rick Wright, who was going through some of his own shit. And it's been coming for a long time. So yes, Roger Waters is being a dick, as I think he is consistently throughout his life. And, setting Rick Wright up to fail to a certain extent, but he's also not totally off base.
They let him produce on Brick in the Wall Part 3, and that's it.
So they go along with it, in part because it's the best idea on the table. And besides, Roger Waters, they've been a little distracted from being in Pink Floyd, and they don't themselves have really any material to offer instead. Now, it is important to note that Roger Waters sees this and pitches this right away as not just an album, but a multimedia experience. This is an album plus a huge live show plus a Hollywood film. That's all baked into the concept for him.
At what point were the producers like, you are too ugly to be the main character in your own movie? We need to hire Bob Geldof.
That is coming. That is coming. Although I got to credit where credit's due. He has aged really well. He looks a lot better now than he did it when he was like 30.
He does. Yeah. Yeah.
But that brings us to our favorite segment on the show. It is By the Numbers.
Woo! Yeah. All right.
I got a few fun numbers for you on Pink Floyd's The Wall. First number I want to give to you is 1, as in one Beach Boy, Bruce Johnston, who sings backgrounds on In the Flesh and a couple other tracks. There was apparently an initial plan to work with all the Beach Boys in LA that got scrapped because of scheduling.
Hell yeah.
There was a moment on one of these songs where I thought Beach Boys or Chicago in terms of like the harmonies. So that's really interesting. Yeah. Okay.
The harmonies are dope.
They've always been good at like the 2-part harmonies, but like the oohs and ahs are solid. Yeah.
They like venture into doo-wop a couple times on this record, which seems asinine.
It works really well.
It definitely works for sure.
Next number I want to throw at you is 40, as in a 40-page script that co-producer Bob Ezrin wrote right after being hired by the band to help what they see ahead of them is a mountain of hard work. The script lays out the storyline and ties a lot of the concepts together and actually was very, very helpful.
So the script existed as they were putting the album together.
Correct. He wrote a script.
That kind of makes sense.
That was his way of helping to tie the concept together. Because even though I said Roger Waters demoed almost all these songs, he also demoed a bunch more songs, some stuff that got left off, some stuff that ends up making an appearance in the movie, some of that stuff ends up on his solo records, right? And Bob Ezrin's first job dealing with this mountain of work is like, let's start to think about it as a story. Let's pull it together. Let's write some background information that's going to help us decide what to include, what not to finish up the writing and ultimately to sequence it, right?
Yeah. Do we really need another brick in the wall parts 6 through 11 here? Can we cut those out?
Do you have it by the numbers on how many times the riff gets played on this album? Jesus Christ.
Dude, way too many. Okay, I got 2 more for you. Next number I want to throw out to you is 11. That is the number of tracks on this double album where David Gilmour is credited with playing bass.
Yeah.
No way.
Hell yeah.
That includes Hey You,
The fretless bass.
Young Lust, Run Like Hell, and Comfortably Numb. I was pretty surprised by this.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
That's a
right.
healthy amount of the album.
Okay, because one of my notes on Hey You was that obviously there's a pretty wicked fretless bass at the beginning, and I'm not shitting on Waters as a player. I think he does a lot of things well, but when I heard that, I was like, he didn't play that.
And speaking of David Gilmour, our next number I was personally fascinated to learn about. It is one, as in one song left over from David Gilmour's solo project sessions. He had a demo, he had all the instrumentation, he had a title, but he didn't have time to develop it on his own. The song in question, Comfortably Numb.
Whoa.
Oh, quite the banger.
Yeah.
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 Just a little filler to throw in.
That's really funny because it is a standalone that, you know, like you said, if they wrote a script and they're like, where can we use this? Right here.
Yeah. That song was so good, even Roger Waters couldn't deny it. He was like, fine. That's pretty good. I guess we got to use that. God damn it. Like,
And before we get back to our story, I just want to say thank you to everyone listening. You guys who are listening every week, we really appreciate you. And we have a lot of fun doing this show, but ultimately we love that you're listening and you give us feedback and you write us emails and you get in those Patreon comment threads. Tell us what we got right. Tell us what we got wrong. Complain about these whiny Englishmen some more. In any case, thank you. So they decide to hire this outside producer, Bob Ezrin, whose main credits at that point are he did all the Alice Cooper records. He did the first Peter Gabriel record, the solo record that had Salisbury Hill on it.
Oh, wow.
And we might remember him on this here show as having produced Kiss's Destroyer.
Oh, wow.
Which we covered on episode 109.
Man.
I do not remember that long
Nice.
ago.
But also, Roger's new wife was working for him as a secretary around this time. So, also along for the ride is an engineer called James Guthrie, who was a young guy recommended by Alan Parsons. From here, his career is basically Floyd-related projects. Now, in addition to the aforementioned 40-page script that Bob Ezrin wrote, he also pushed to try to make the story more universal and less autobiographical to Roger. He helped Roger get past the whole no resolution climax part, instead insisting that the album needed to end with the wall coming down. I have to say that's pretty important.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think without that, then it becomes what a lot of these concept albums become, which is they hit on it a few times, but there's not a holistic arc to it. And in retrospect, seems very important.
You know, this is more speculation, but because the band was a little bit over each other and feeling like they were at a little bit of a dead end artistically and maybe even commercially because they were already so big, they are seeing the need to bring in outside help and get some different visions in there. And so the other person that Roger Waters brings in is an artist. He realizes he needs visual direction. And even before the band starts recording, he hires a guy called Gerald Scarfe, an illustrator who did political cartoons for the paper and whom the band had seen a short film by a few years back. He had worked a little bit with the band before. He had made some of the animations for the last tour, but this was like a proper partnership where Roger Waters wanted him to guide the entire visual aesthetic of everything here, and he does. He contributes to the album cover and all the puppets that are part of the stage show, and of course all the animations that are both a part of the stage show and a huge part of the Hollywood film. Pink Floyd are noted for working with iconic designer Storm Thurgeson.
That's right.
Of Hypnosis. And they have this string of undeniably iconic album covers to go with it. So this was their first purposeful departure from that relationship.
He really did knock it out of the park with like all of the other albums. Pink Floyd's albums are amazing. They are probably some of the best album covers, with the exception of Adam Hart Mother, which is just a cow's ass. But everything else is really great.
Yeah, I agree. I do think this is bold. I mean, you could certainly argue the Beatles already did it, but the fact that it has nothing on it, right? Like you mentioned it earlier, Tom, but the cover on streaming now has a scrawled Pink Floyd The Wall on it, but the white brick wall has nothing on my copy.
Oh, there's not even like bricks or anything. It's just white?
It's just bricks. Sorry, it's just bricks with no writing. But I'm saying that is a bold choice.
Yeah.
It's also a major contrast of the minimalism from the album cover with the utter maximalism content.
Everything within.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that. I was thinking it's such an interesting exercise in maximalism and minimalism because of something Tom said. I've always thought of Pink Floyd as being this insanely patient band. They're so good at building atmosphere. They know when not to overdo it with production, weirdly, right? But then on the other side, of course, you have this double album. You have these excessive, dramatic songs and occasionally quite a lot of tracks, of course, overdubbed on the tracks. So I think it's an interesting mix. It's a yin-yang of minimalism and maximalism because I think their stamp of patience is still on it.
Right.
I think musically, the way it comes across, the way they build musically, it's great. And it's very Floyd-esque and it is patient. I think it's just too much. It's not Meatloaf where it's throwing the kitchen sink into one song. It's really just taking what they do and multiplying it, I think, 3x more than it probably needs lengthwise. So I think to me, that's where some of the maximalism comes in.
It's fair. I'm just saying that there's both things going on, and that was my feeling coming away from it.
Simple album cover. Do you think we can crash an actual plane on the stage? Yes. Yes, we can.
Yes. All right. We're going to get to that. So now finally we're at the recording of The Wall, which kicks off at Britannia Row Studios in London in the fall of 1978. This is the studio the band themselves had built after the success of Wish You Were Here. It's where they recorded their previous album, Animals. And weirdly enough, it sounds like almost, if not all, the drum takes were done first and done here. But suddenly the band has financial troubles that interrupt and threaten to halt this recording process. At some point in the 70s, the band hired a firm to take their pre-tax album royalties and funnel them into venture capital investments like pizza shops and hotels, and even an early video game console.
ColecoVision?
Basically a tax shelter. Unfortunately, the other shoe drops in 1978 when it was discovered that the firm was stealing from the band, basically disguising a series of failing investments by stealing from the regular, more stable investment side of the house. That company folded shortly thereafter, and the band was suddenly stuck, at least from their perspective, suddenly, with a £3 million loss and a back tax bill of between 5 and 12 million pounds.
Jesus.
God damn. No wonder the drummer got cut out of the production credits.
Wow.
So this is important context for what comes next, because now they're in a position where they need to make a bunch of cash quickly, but the new album, The Wall, isn't even close to being done, and their accountant advises them to leave the UK for a full year. By doing that, the money they make in that year will avoid all UK taxes.
We got a nice studio in the Cayman Islands down here that you can record it.
Well, this was a fairly common scheme for rock stars in the 70s. Because, this UK tax loophole was also used by the Rolling Stones, Rod Stewart, Bowie, Ringo Starr, Cat Stevens, Tom Jones. It was very popular. You can't, for the record, you can't do that in America.
Right.
They will tax you no matter where you are. End result is they have to finish the album outside of England, so they decamp to a studio called Super Bear in the mountains behind Monaco in France, the spot where David Gilmour and Rick Wright had recently recorded their own solo projects a year before.
Oh, man.
And that is where we're going to leave our story for this episode, with the band fleeing home to avoid taxes, holding up together in a foreign land. Because they're such great friends, everything is going to go great from there.
Yes, no conflicts.
Spoiler alert, the way they make all that money back is to try to win a talent show contest like the Brady Bunch, where they break the plate and then they...
So we are going to get into talking about the songs of the first half of The Wall here, but stay tuned for episode 2 of Pink Floyd's The Wall. We're going to dive into the making of the album, the firing of Rick Wright, and thus the breakup of the classic Pink Floyd lineup, plus the monumental tour they staged to promote this album. But for now, let's get into the songs, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right.
All right, we're going to follow these through chronologically. Let's play a clip of the opening track. It is called In the Flesh, ?
What? So again, the outsider who had never listened to this album, true story, sitting down for the first time, headphones on. That little intro started, and I thought, oh, my headphones, like, it must be turned down. So I turned up the volume, and nothing really happened. So I went to shake, like, the connector to think, like, oh, maybe it's not working. And as I touched it, it came in, and I jumped. Like, I mean, completely scared the shit out of me. It was awesome. So well done, Pink Floyd.
It does come in. It hits hard on that first. It's fucking great.
This is a great album opener. Holy shit. Yeah.
Great album opener. That it gets overused over the course of the album, but like it's a fucking brilliant little slow, patient riff.
Yeah, I think there's a question of whether they needed the full reprise, which I know we'll talk about disc 2 later, but I think it's a killer way to open the album. And they don't do that this much rocking in the beginning of most of their albums. Like I feel like with Dark Side, it's a lot more of a slow burn, but for them to come in hard, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's such a much more of a punch in the face than any of the other albums and how they open. Everything else opens as a slow burn and kind of gets you there, and this is just like a slap in the face. Also, such a cool, and they're thinking about the stage show. Great way to open the stage show. The soft then loud did exactly what it was supposed to do with Adam there, cranking it up and getting blasted.
Yeah.
So cool. And then we were talking about Bruce Johnson, the Beach Boy, the longtime Beach Boy, but there's great harmonies in this. There's a lot of that doo-wop.
Absolutely.
There's that like bass harmony part. Do, 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 do. There's a lot of cool stuff going on vocally.
And it's evocative of music that probably would have been popular when he was a child. A throwback to that sort of, because this is supposed to represent childhood. This part of the album is childhood to basically getting to be a star. Yeah, it's probably the type of stuff that his parents were listening to, or I guess at least his mom was listening to.
You know what? We should have done this earlier, but let's just summarize the beats the story is going to hit, and then we'll touch on them again as we hit the songs. Yeah, it's about a kid who's growing up during World War II in Britain, whose father goes off and doesn't come back, gets killed in the war, and maybe faces some of the bombings in London and things like that, and has a tough time in school and gets beaten down by the British school system and mean teachers and things like that, and has an overbearing mother, and internalizes all these things such that when he grows up and becomes a rock star, he's acting out. He's going to prostitutes. He's trashing hotel rooms. That kind of gets us through side 1. And he's feeling pretty isolated and basically ready to commit suicide.
And that is partially autobiographical because Roger Waters' dad was killed in World War II, but he was like a year old when it happened. So he wasn't remembering the Battle of Britain or anything like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was a conscientious objector.
Oh, shit.
And then he changed that and joined the army, and then he died.
No, you're right. It's not necessarily totally about Roger, and he took pains many times to say it wasn't 100% about him. He's intending it to be kind of universal.
It's a better story with him being a little bit older, I think.
For sure. And I wanted to point out that, this thing about the dad not coming back, which we'll get to in an upcoming song, Roger also likened that to himself being the father who goes out on the tour. All these guys have young kids. Right. They're in their mid-30s at this point. So, he's meaning that to be kind of circular as well.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a great song in its own right, but I think it starts to build in what's cool about this record is the sound effects and the way they layer in the feeling, because I've heard the song a million times and still every time I hear it, when it gets to the end of the song to transition out,
dive bomb, plane crash, yeah,
whatever sounds like planes crashing and sirens, I mean, I get like goosebumps and I get genuinely haunted and scared almost when that part comes around, and I know it's coming, but it's just, I don't know if it's a connection from listening to it when I was younger or if it's truly just well engineered, but it packs a punch, I think.
Can we get to the first official complaint of the album? Already in track 1. The delay on the vocals that they put in the right channel. There's a kind of like a little vocal delay that just comes on the right channel. It's fine in this song, but they beat that shit to death by the end of the album. They're always doing these vocal delays that are coming in just a little bit late. And by the time you're listening to this album for the 3rd or 4th time of the week, you're definitely like, fucking vocal delay again. I get it. It sounds cool on this song, but like there's other tricks in the book there, man. Maybe if they had a better engineer, maybe if they stuck with Alan Parsons, it would have.
Let's go on to The Thin Ice, the second track. Let's just play a quick clip of bass backing it up. It feels very manicured sonically in a very cool way. It almost reminded me of the Radiohead song Everything in Its Right Place. Not that it necessarily sounds like that, but it felt powerful and like they really worked on that single second of music.
Yeah, totally. When you first hear this, you're like, is that what Roger Waters sounds like when he talks? Is that like what his actual voice sounds like? Oh, okay. I guess that is. Yeah, it's a little abrasive. Could you imagine that being like your dad or your husband? Just gotta hear that shit all the time.
Let's talk about use of vocals here, because they do use a lot of tricks in the vocals effectively. One is the double vocals, which begin here in this song, where Gilmour is doing some of the vocals and Roger Waters, like Gilmour has the more soothing voice, very purposely, and Roger Waters has the high-pitched, unhinged kind of voice.
Yes.
Good description.
And they work really well together.
Yeah.
And secondly, I think Roger Waters on his own sometimes does it, and sometimes he uses Gilmour as a parry, but they do the octave jump a lot.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll see that throughout the album where they start low, and then to kick it up a notch, or maybe they'll switch singers to kick it up a notch, but they'll also be going an octave up. And Roger Waters does have, it's a weird voice perhaps, but it is a pretty operatic, crazy range, actually.
You kind of forget how much he can wail until certain points of the album. You're like, damn, that's a high note that he's really getting from the chest. You know, he's not, Gilmour sings a little bit more from like the throat. He's got a little, back of the throat type of singing. Waters is all chest and he's really booming. And that's hard. That is not easy to do. It's almost like he's like a classically trained singer or something like that. But I mean, my impression is that he was just some dipshit.
He's just emptying the tank in the studio, right? Just like he's walking into the room, go for it.
And not only that, he was vocalist number 3, even after Syd Barrett left the band. Like Wright and Gilmour did so many more of the vocals in those earlier hits. And Roger's like slowly starting to find his voice, even though he's writing the lyrics. In those earlier instances, he's having the other guys sing it, and then he's like slowly finding his confidence, which is interesting because I think he does have technically the best voice.
Yeah.
Okay, we can keep rolling into the next. We can even take these next 3 as a piece, and if we want to cite specific timestamps, we can. But the ride from Another Brick in the Wall Part 1 through Another Brick in the Wall Part 2.
I even knew that Part 1 existed. I don't think that they played this part on rock radio. So when I heard this, I heard that ding, tick, ding, tick, and I was like, oh, maybe I know this, but I hadn't. So it was a cool, like you said, this is kind of like a 3-part thing where I've only ever heard the middle. So the first and end pieces were very cool this week to lay context around the middle piece that I know well.
Yeah, this guitar work by Gilmour is fucking pristine. Pristine guitar work. Yeah.
That slap back, like that delay thing.
Yeah, it's such a Gilmour. The way he uses delay is masterful. I love it. And it comes up a bunch on this record to just give it that echoey rhythm thing. It's happening here. It happens in Run Like Hell. It happens in a bunch of spots on this record. It's so cool. And the mix makes it swell and swirl in some really interesting ways. And as you're implying, Adam, these 3 really are one song. They all lead to Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, to that dropout to a disco beat. And that really enhances the effect of Another Brick in the Wall Part 2.
It does. But the coolest part of this little triplet of songs is The Happiest Day of Our Lives. That song's fucking awesome. I love the way that when he jumps up the octave to the vocals, they do that little like Whole Lot of Love pre-delay thing, where you get the line in your right ear, then your left ear, then it comes fully down the middle. It's so good. And that bass line kind of slaps too.
Complicated, but it cuts through. It's kind of grindy. He's playing with the pick, Tom. I hope you
I know.
are aware of that. But yeah.
To me, like, it shows how they're still such sonic sculptors. And this bass thump on Happiest Days of Our Lives is a great example. They really molded it into something, that plus the bass drum, right? It really cuts through in this really interesting way. And so congrats to the arrangers, the recorders, as well as the mixers on that.
Yeah.
But then the fact that you get this like hard drop into Another Brick in the Wall. I mean, that is the coolest moment to me of the set. It's not that Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 is so great. It's that you pair them together and you get this like dropout. That's a cool moment.
Well, and I think it must be purposeful why they set up the track so that the first half second or whatever includes the little trailing piece from the song before, so that you get the drop, because I could see in production maybe wanting to leave that off of the actual single. But yeah, it's killer. And even the song itself, it's so played out. We've all heard it a million times. It's like one of those songs that is another classification of entertainment for me at this point, like barely music.
Right.
But if you step aside from that, it is a great song. It's super cool. It's a little cheesy and a little too disco-y, a little too maybe like Shakedown Street-y, but it's fucking great. And the guitar work is also stellar on this track.
Name another more iconic rhythm guitar.
Right. Yeah,
like
right.
Maybe Long Train Runnin'. Like, there aren't that many.
Everybody's favorite Pink Floyd song their freshman year of high school, certainly this song. I feel like I definitely had an issue really appreciating this song because I have heard it so many times. Adam, remember we used to cover this song?
We did this. I did this in high school. Yeah, man. Yep.
I actually think that the song in isolation is not as strong as a couple of the other songs on this side of the album, but I do feel like it really does have a universal chanty, iconic nature to it. And I have to point out, at 2:29, it might be my favorite thing that Gilmour does on the entire album. In that solo, he just does this little rake.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so
the rake.
fucking good. And it's
really
like,
is.
you're not fast, you're not flashy. It's just,
He is such a feel player. He's so good. And this solo is a great example. I read about how they recorded this. This solo is a Gibson Les Paul plugged straight into the mixing board.
No way.
Yes.
Damn.
Yeah, exactly. And then later he was like unhappy with it. They did eventually reamp it, but he claims that was at his insistence, and Roger would only let him put like 5% of the reamped version of the DI take in there.
So clean.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's all the hands, man. That's the kind of shit. If you show that to a tech pedal nerd, it'll make them cry.
Right.
But speaking of the rhythm too, this is also one of those areas where, we did that Police album recently, and I think I mentioned the Walking on the Moon bass line as like dead simple to play, but that like bassists should learn it as a way of learning how to be effective in space. And I think I would say the same thing about this bass line too. It's so simple, but the way it counters against the rhythm, I think it's a great example of just like effective, tasteful bass playing that is like technically could not be easier to play.
I found that when I played this, I was playing along to the album this week, I was playing so much more than he was playing. And I was like, oh shit, I'm putting way too much in there. It's like a third of the notes that I'm playing.
Right.
It's almost like boring to play.
That's their brilliance.
Yeah.
That is their whole brilliance. Everyone in this band is doing that, is what I feel like. Because even in this solo, there's a lot of space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of not playing in the solo. I think they're just masters of that, and it's really hard.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, and even when the bass comes in, I think after the first go around of the riff, it's one note and it comes in, but it feels like it's just punching you in the gut.
Yeah.
I can't believe I haven't mentioned Hammond organ yet. And how many songs in are we? But this was one of the first, if not the first song where my dad explained what the Leslie on a Hammond setup does. And underneath of the guitar solo, you can hear him turning that Leslie speaker, the whoa, 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 like just playing with it, and you can hear that. And I remember my dad sitting me down, probably with headphones, and you can hear that swirl, and I was like, whoa, that's...
Did you want to explain that?
Yeah. So usually Hammond organs are pumped through a speaker, just like any other electric instrument, but the actual speaker in a Leslie cabinet spins, and you can control the speed of that speaker spinning. So the noises that I was just doing were imitating how the sound speeds up and then slows down with this kind of wavy, it's almost like a volume swell a bit, and it happens so fast, but that gives motion to what's underlying. So even during the guitar solo, you feel motion, even though he's just holding one chord, but there's this vibrato effect going on in the background. Hey.
Yeah, no, very cool. Well, like I mentioned it earlier, but this is their first and only #1 hit.
Man, that's badass.
So somehow they found themselves at the top of the charts by making a disco song effectively. And listen, I agree with you guys that it's hard to rehear this song because it's become it's so iconic. It's such a reference point for sort of everything that you can't help but be a little sick of it. But that said, on its face, It is iconic. The chanting, how could that not make school kids want to chant, right?
Yeah, exactly. They know what they were doing with that.
Exactly. I heard, too, that Roger Waters didn't even think of it as a potential single until he heard the children's choir overdubbed on the tape. And he's like, oh, wait a minute.
This is chantable. We got ourselves a hit.
He still made 3 parts of it, but
Okay, let's finish out the first side of this 4-sided record. Side the concept and even the album for a second. David Gilmour is playing Roger's mom in the song.
I never picked up on that way like back in the day, hearing the song a bunch of times. It wasn't until this exercise that I realized, and I think they do that a couple times on this album, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. He's like the voice of soothing calm very generally. Another fun tidbit is that the drummer on this is not Nick Mason, it's Jeff Porcaro from Toto.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No way.
The guy's on fucking everything.
That's
He's
awesome.
on everything.
Apparently Nick Mason couldn't handle it, so I want to talk about that first off, because like apparently Nick Mason was struggling with it. Again, I don't know if he was just over it or not, but like it's a little stutter steppy, I guess. And they do change time signatures a couple times.
Yeah.
Like there's an extra measure in a couple places, and the Gilmour part goes to 3/4 instead of 4/4. But I'm confused. Yeah,
There's nothing in here that he's not some scrub. Like
I will say Porcaro definitely makes the transition with that extra bar between I think it's technically 6/8 and 8/8. It makes that very smooth when they throw that extra bar in. It seems very natural. You have to kind of pay attention to know that there's a time change there. But this song has always been an example to me of the insane patience of a drone note and how well that can work. When that harmonium note comes in, basically over the second part of the first verse, where it's just like, doo, and then like, mother, should I trust the government? Kind of like jumps up. It's so perfect and it's so beautiful. And again, it's something that like any one of us could do that. Like there's nothing complicated going on there. It's like 3 notes. Yeah.
It's taste and patience, and I think it's a great tune, has great lyrics, and I want to compliment Roger Waters for the first time of a few times. He has a gift for lyric writing. Mother, Should I Trust the Government was built for dorm room posters.
All right.
Congratulations, dude. You nailed it.
I very much equate this song with our friend Lisa, who died when we were in college, who at her house in high school, in her mom's basement, she had the wall poster, and it was just the wall background motif like on the cover, and it just had spray painted on it, Mother, Should I Trust the Government? And I was like, even before I was like super familiar with that album, I was just like, that's fucking badass. What's up to this?
It's creepy. It's evocative. This is my personal favorite guitar solo on the first half of the record.
Yeah.
I think it's a really tasty solo. Simple, but super effective, which is Gilmour's jam. We should maybe mention that we may have talked about this before, but the way that Gilmour does solos is he does like 5 takes, kind of cold on the tune, and then he just goes back and listens to them all and marks which bars he likes from each take, and then splices them together.
Oh, that's cool.
That's his express game plan.
Does he splice them? I was always under the impression that he went and then re-recorded it as a single piece.
I think sometimes it's both, and he did mention, I saw this interview with him where he was talking about like listening and marking bars and splicing takes together. I'm sure it's a little bit of both, and of course sometimes he then goes back and tries the splice and realizes that it's a little weird, it'd be weird to play that way, so he rewrites. Yeah, there's probably an element of both things, and then certainly he has to learn it for the live show, but I mean, they're kind of the same thing, effectively, right? But it should feel like something you could play as one piece, of course, and he's aware of that constraint.
Well, and hearing him talk about the way he approaches solos, too, I'm not a guitar player. He has zero, we talked earlier about he doesn't play fast, he's not trying to shred, but he either can't or doesn't want to or isn't inclined, but he's straight up like, I am not a fast player, I can't really play that fast. And so what I do is I just try to play something that sounds nice. It's just like, well, that's a thought.
What a simple concept. That's great. Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that he just locked into a style, and the style is his, and he plays the guitar more like a singer writing melodies. I think he's just very aware of that fact, and he's a great, you talked about learning bass guitar from this band that is very restrained with how many notes they play and consistent. I think Gilmour solos are the same way. They teach you a lot about how melody actually works and how it's not about playing more notes. And I can just tell you as a guitar player, it's hard. The temptation to play more notes faster is always there.
Yeah, I think that goes for any instrument.
Yeah. And somebody talked about that's why Bela Fleck is like the greatest banjo player, because anybody can kind of do the boom, like super fast banjo, but he plays slow banjo and makes it sound good. And like, that's way harder to play slow.
Right.
And like we said, some of it with Gilmour is the notes themselves, and some of it is the feel. He's a master bender of notes. He does those things like the rake. It's a lot of simple but subtle things that make the solos good. Okay. Let's flip the record over.
Be my favorite song on the album. This was the one, again, first time through, where I was almost like jaw open as to how weird this was. The dissonance running up against those beautiful, again, this was the one that I thought had that Beach Boys Chicago style harmony. And yeah, this just stuck out to me. Like, it was just amazing. So this song blew me away, having never heard it before.
This is my favorite from the first half as well.
I love the song. I hate to be in lockstep. I'm trying to find things to complain about, but like this song is incredible. And yeah, the vacillation between sort of hopeful and beautiful, and then just dark and dissonant, and then back again.
It works.
Nobody does Sinister like Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd can do Sinister better than any other band ever.
Oh, yeah. Dark, ominous synths, dark clouds, and then you get these lush harmonies and these layered acoustic guitar. I think they're nylon string guitars. So beautiful.
It's a borderline like uncomfortable listen.
Yeah, and if you described this concept to somebody, be like, I want to juxtapose these. It sounds corny. Like, oh, you're gonna have like some weird, ugly thing and then a pretty thing. It's not gonna work. It totally works.
Yeah, this song is absolutely fantastic, and it's another example of a song that absolutely fits with the story, but absolutely can stand on its own. It's just an amazing song outside of it fitting into this concept album, which is where I think a lot of these concept albums fall flat. Most of the songs don't really work outside of the album. But this song, you just play this song on the radio. It's gorgeous.
We're meant to understand that this is about the Blitz, and it's either about his mother telling the kid that she went through the Blitz, which is the bombing of London and England during the war, or he's remembering it. Either way, Goodbye Blue Sky. You're right, it fits. It continues the storytelling. Okay, speaking of industrial, ominous synth, let's go on to, and we'll treat him as a single piece, Empty Spaces into Young Lust.
Empty Spaces existed just so Gilmour didn't get too much shine for Young Lust as a song that he contributed, because it's Empty Spaces doesn't do a whole lot for me, just in terms of it's just kind of a nothing. It's a cast off.
It got dropped in at the last second. We're going to learn that in the next part of the story. I do like the kick into Young Lust, though.
Yes.
So it's another one of these pairings that feels like it's just kicking you up for the track. Now, that said, I don't love Young Lust, the track, that much. It has some cool stuff about it. But it's that moment when the track changes that is a very exciting moment.
Young Lust is also, I feel like it's just, they were like, we need kind of more straight ahead song. We've been kind of a little wandering far afield. Can we just get a straight ahead rock song for a second? He's like, yeah, we got a straight ahead rock song for you. How about the last minute? It's a phone conversation. Like, can we make that happen?
Yeah. So that's a real phone operator who's effectively being pranked into believing that someone is calling home from abroad, calling their wife at home, and that a man is picking up, and that person is realizing that.
No way.
So you're getting a real
awesome
reaction from the phone operator.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great.
Because now in the story, we flashed ahead to the main character, who's called Pink. He's now a rock star. He's an adult, and he's on tour, and he's calling home to realize that his wife is cheating on him.
Yeah, but also kind of while he's cheating on her, too.
He is also cheating. Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
How have we not talked about how, as creative as this band is and nuanced, to call the main character Pink Floyd is a little ridiculous. I get it, but
like Floyd would have been a little better.
No, but that, I believe that comes from, because they also reference it on Have a Cigar on Wish You Were Here. That comes from apparently record executives being so confused by their name, right? And thinking that that was a person in the band.
I had heard that before. I sort of get that. It's too on the nose for me. I don't know. Maybe that's a small nit to pick, but
You could have called him Fink Floyd.
Well, you know, their name is the combination of two blues musicians' names.
Yeah.
That is how they got that. I mean, talk about a name that you would just never think would work, but now you've heard it enough that it's perfect.
totally.
Yeah, it's not a great name. But it is a great name.
It all worked out, yeah. I also think the solo on Young Lust is the most Animals of the solo. He's getting real squawky talk box crunch in there.
Yeah.
Serious pinch harmonics. It's a
One
little...
of the songs that I feel like I can see why they'd be like, yeah, people in the crowd will want to sing this. You know, you get a bunch of drunk guys, they're going to want to sing this song.
It's definitely not my favorite.
It feels like something that would be on like one of the 80s Floyd albums. So I guess in that way, maybe it's foreshadowing something, but this one always felt like I could take it or leave it. But I've heard some people say this is one of their favorite tracks on the album. I don't know. It wasn't it for me.
You hang out with a lot of guys in like tap out shirts, drinking like Monster Energy drinks.
All right. So, yeah, I guess I'm willing to call this my low point on the first half. I'll call it my low point. We're about to get into some weirder territory, but I think it actually is a little better and more needed for the story. So let's segue into, let's just call it the last block of songs. We can talk about these in chronological order or play any clips we want. One of My Turns, to Don't Leave Me Now, to Another Brick in the Wall Part 3, to Goodbye.
This is where in the movie anyway, he is like trashing the hotel room and throwing the TV out the window, which I found funny because one of the funniest things I came across in doing some research for this was that scene where he's throwing the TV out the window apparently is inspired by Nick Mason, who, according to Wikipedia, threw TVs, plural, out the window during tours. Like
that was just his thing.
It wasn't like he did it
That's what he
once.
got
It
up
was
on.
like,
Right.
that was his...
Yeah.
His shtick. God.
So look, I think that on both of these discs, the end is weaker than the beginning, and we're getting way more into the theatrical and more into like the overt narration of the story, which I find inherently less interesting. That said, I think this is a stronger end of disc than side 2's end of disc.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a few compliments for it, which is on One of My Turns, I think Roger Waters nails this vocal.
Oh, yeah.
He's like acting. He's getting across the feeling. It's not just through the words, it's through the delivery. And I'm pointing it out in part because I think he has a tendency to move towards bombast in his singing, because he is this high singer who can really wail when he wants to. That's often called for in the material. But in this, he's singing very quietly, but he gets like the desperation, the fragile emotional state across.
Yeah. I like how the implication is he's like, go into my bedroom, in the suitcase on the left, you'll find my favorite axe. Even in pre 9/11 days, you couldn't travel with an axe. They're not letting you on the fucking plane with that, man. What is going on with there? And then he's got I always like the line where he says, you want to, or we can contemplate this silent freeway. I've always liked that line.
Ooh, silent freeway.
I love the concept of the silent freeway because it's like you're in a city, but you feel alone, like isolated. But then they put car sounds in. Like, clearly it's not a silent freeway. It's quite a loud freeway.
Yeah, kind of defeats the purpose.
But so that's kind of the best of this set, in my opinion, is One of My Turns. And then by the time we get to Don't Leave Me Now, I get it. They're trying to give you this weird waltz beat, keep you off kilter. It goes on a little too long for me.
I found myself, I gave this a proper listen. I mean, I've heard it before a long time ago, but for this exercise, gave it a proper listen. In the repeated listens, I was kind of skipping some of the stuff at this point. It's a bit non-essential. And this is kind of prime example of where I see the pomp and the bombast. And I just don't know how necessary it was. Maybe if they consolidated this into one super album, maybe it would have been too long for a vinyl or some technicality I'm not thinking of, but it just seemed a little unnecessary.
As much of a slog as this track is, and how dissonant it is, I think it's worth it for that break-in at 3. Know that that's coming. I actually appreciate, God, having to listen to this because, man, that kick-in, whoo, that is killer to me.
Yeah, yeah. But then it fizzles because you're like, oh, another brick in the wall, part 3, which doesn't really add anything to the story or the canon. Like, we get it. Okay, these are all the things that are building up and making you hate everybody. All right, great. And then Goodbye, Cruel World. I actually don't mind. I kind of actually like that. Yeah. I like the way that it ends.
I like that too, yeah. I would have cut Don't Leave Me Now and I would have trimmed the brick in the wall. I get why he wants to get those new lyrics and kind of give it yet a third take. It feels distinct enough. You know, you're reprising your song. That doesn't really bother me. They're breaking real plates as to add to the percussion and that. Like, that's really in there. But yeah, Don't Leave Me Now is the one that like kind of bugs me.
Yeah.
Well, I think the problem, if you're going to do this Brick in the Wall 3 thing, or rather, if you're going to beat the motif into the ground, which they do throughout the rest of the album, maybe scale back on having part 3, because it's just another reinforcement of this motif that you get plenty of, I think, throughout the record.
So we're going to talk about the stage show in episode 2, but they are thinking of the stage show because they have to hammer it home because they are building the wall during this entire time, such that at the close of this disc, the wall is 100% built. And now they're going to kick off the next side and kind of talk about it, building up to the breakdown of said wall. So there is, there are a few interlinking pieces, and we didn't get a chance to see the show because we're much, much too young. But
should have brought Phil's dad on.
I do just like how goodbye, cruel world, I'm leaving. Anyway, here's 39 more minutes of music.
Wait, does he kill himself here? Jesus. What's the next disc?
That's when it gets weird.
Yeah.
That's when it gets weird. Yeah.
We're going to wrap up this week's episode of Pink Floyd's The Wall. We're not going to be voting right now, nor picking a new album. We still got a lot more story to cover in the second half of this album, so stay tuned for next week when we dive into that and finally proffer our official votes on whether you need to hear this before you die. And not only that, let me tell you, audience, I've been studying the scrolls. I have some fun stats to report about us complainers and our biases.
Oh no.
Through the first 250 episodes of our show. Let the numbers speak for themselves. You cannot hide from math.
Let me guess, Adam's a racist. I got it.
Thank you for listening. Join us next week to hear all that exciting stuff and talk more about Pink Floyd's The Wall. For everyone here at 1001 Album Complaints, I have been Rob.
I've been Tom.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Alan.
Boosh, 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 boosh.